You know that feeling when you scroll through a sea of gaming laptops, all flashing slick designs and eye-catching specs, only to get the laptop in your hands and discover the keyboard feels mushy, the fans scream at anything beyond a browser, and the battery dies before you finish a single level? I've been there more than once, and that's why I'm doing this deep dive before you click Add to Cart. I've spent the past week actually setting up the Lenovo LOQ 15.6 inch, running a mix of indie titles, a couple of the newer AAA releases, and even some creative software to see how it behaves when you're not just gaming. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the LOQ isn't trying to be a desktop replacement that you lug around for a full-day marathon. It's marketed as a portable powerhouse for gamers who still want to move between a dorm, a coffee shop, or a cramped apartment. The real test is how it balances that promise with the day-to-day compromises you actually notice. The first thing I noticed when I opened the box was the overall look. The Luna gray finish is muted enough to blend in with a bookshelf rather than screen gamer. That's a plus if you care about aesthetics beyond the typical neon green chassis. The laptop is thin enough to slide into a standard backpack, but it's not featherlight, it feels solid, which is reassuring when you're moving it around a lot. Performance-wise, the AMD Ryzen 5 7235HS paired with an NVIDIA RTX 4050 hits the sweet spot for 1080p gaming. In my tests, titles like Valorant and Fortnite consistently hit the 7080 frames per second mark on high settings, and even a more demanding game like Elden Ring settled into the low 50s when I turned down a few shadows and texture details. That's more than enough for smooth play on a 15.6-inch screen, and it's the kind of performance you can actually see without having to tweak settings every 5 minutes. What's practical about this is that you can game on a coffee shop Wi-Fi without the laptop throttling down because the CPU and GPU share a decent amount of thermal headroom for that power envelope. Speaking of thermals, this is where the LOQ shows its hidden trade-off. The fans do a respectable job keeping temperatures in check, but they aren't silent. When you push the RTX 4050 into a sustained workload, say a 30-minute session of Cyberpunk 2077 at medium settings, the fans spin up to a noticeable whine. It's not a full-blown roar, but it's audible enough that you'll hear it in a quiet room. If you plan to game in a shared living space, that fan noise could be a factor. On the flip side, the cooling system never lets the laptop hit thermal throttling, so you won't suddenly drop frames in the middle of a fight. Storage is where the LOQ feels modern and practical. The 512GB NVMe SSD boots Windows in under 10 seconds, and loading times for games are crisp. Apex Legends opened in about 8 seconds from the desktop. However, the 512GB capacity can fill up quickly if you keep a library of modern games. You'll likely need an external drive or a cheap secondary SSD to keep a healthy amount of space. That's a common compromise on laptops in this price range, but it's worth mentioning so you can plan your storage strategy ahead of time. Battery life is another realistic metric that often gets glossed over in marketing videos. With the screen set to 60 Hz and the GPU idle, I got roughly 4.5 hours of mixed usage, a bit of browsing, a short YouTube binge, and a light indie game. Once you crank up the GPU for a serious session, you're looking at around 1.5 hours before the charger becomes essential. If you expect to game unplugged for long periods, the LOQ isn't designed for that scenario. It's better suited for short bursts of play in places where you can plug in, like a dorm lounge or a friend's apartment. Now, who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a college student or a young professional who wants a laptop that can handle both coursework and the occasional gaming night, the LOQ hits a sweet spot. Its 16 GB of RAM means you can keep multiple applications open, think Chrome tabs, a word processor, and a game launcher without the system grinding to a halt. The RTX 4050 also gives you access to ray-traced effects at lower settings, which is nice for future-proofing without breaking the bank. Additionally, the sleek design means you won't feel out of place in a professional environment, and the laptop is light enough to carry to classes. On the other hand, there are clear cases where you should pass on this model. If you're an esports competitor looking for a sub-50 ms response time, the 15.6-inch 144Hz panel, which the LOQ doesn't have, is a missing piece. Also, if you're a creator who needs a massive amount of raw storage or a workstation-grade GPU for heavy rendering, the 512GB SSD and RTX 4050 will feel limiting.